opportunity and bringing me onto your live stream.
It's a pleasure. You are literally one of the goats and legends.
Thank you
I,
so much.
I'm not saying this lightly because you're really doing incredible things for the culture and everything else. So
Thank you.
it was a no-brainer. Um, my first question to you is, in your perspective, what do you see the scene growing as in uh how has the scene grown, or how has the scene from where you started to now? Like, how do you see it evolving, evolving, or um, making it bad or good, if that makes sense?
Sure, 100%. I think the scene is vastly different to how it was when I first started. I mean, I first started my career at a very, very, very young age with an absolute obsession towards music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Actually came up with the name G&G Sound, which was our company before it became G&G Pro and G&G Productions.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, back then things were vastly different. I mean, there were no CDJs. It was all vinyl back in the day. It was all records. DJs were few and far between. These days, everyone's a DJ. Everyone has access to music. They have access to, you know, awesome DJ controllers. It's like crazy, actually, what's going on. It's just an absolute abundance of some amazing artists as well, of course. But marketing was very different in those days. Very, very different. When we started promoting events, our own events, I think it was a bit easier. We used to have flyers and posters and big, big promotion teams that would, go onto the beaches. They would go to the universities. They would go to the schools when we did under 18 parties, and they would hand out flyers and put posters under bridges.
Mm-hmm.
And we always had these gigantic promo teams that would kind of move into a town if we were doing Rage and Flex or in Belito or wherever it might be. And we had these huge promo teams because you needed big teams of people to go out there and promote your event.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know now, everything is online.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't call it a challenge for myself, but it's definitely a world that I'm not so much a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Throughout my career, I've always brought a lot of young people into what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think nowadays, when it comes to marketing, it's very much based on content and content creation and all of that stuff, where in the old days it was very physical, the marketing. And I think in a way, maybe more fun. It's a lot of competitors out there nowadays. And I think to compete in that digital space where every second, advert you see on Instagram or on social media is another event, another DJ. Um, it's just so different, so different to how it used to be.
Yeah. Would you mind if I have my take on it, if you don't mind?
Yeah, please.
I feel like 100%, because as much as I love social media and I do it for a living and all that stuff, I really love it. But it's becoming very, what's the word, that the is you can't digest it properly. It's too much, too fast. It's too much. Like, you can't necessarily get. Oh, there's events, yes, 100%. I love there's so many events happening and all that stuff. Yes, I love that, but there's no core purpose of the event. They just post it and then they expect the people to come. No,
Exactly.
it's becoming very. It's not structured properly. You think, oh, just because you have so many followers, it becomes, you're not having a strong fan base, or
Yeah,
if that makes sense, where you guys have built a strong fan base,
yeah.
is and your career has cemented so many friendships and stuff like that. And I wish so many people and so many event people would understand how important networking is now, more than social media, because people are so focused on social media right now, that they're missing the core.
Sure.
core vibration, if that makes sense. Or
Makes so much sense. And actually, I saw something quite funny the other day. It was like this older guy who was like quite, he looked quite panicked in terms of the meme, and it was, it said nowadays entrepreneurs realize that they have to dance, on Instagram. And it's so true. It's a little bit of little bit of a popularity contest. To be honest with you, it's who's got the best image, who's the best looking,
yes,
who's got the best social media content,
yes,
and it's become a bit of a popularity contest. And I think it's also a lot of authenticity is lost.
yes,
Because now you can create this persona and this image of yourself that you might not necessarily be, if that makes any sense.
100%.
And
And sorry to cut you off.
yeah,
You-
no,
um, and you can talk and I'll talk. What were you saying?
no, it's vastly different nowadays. I think going back to the original question, it's a different scene. It's a very, very different scene. And I think, authenticity for me is a massive thing. And it's kind of a place where I came from, the old vinyl days,
Yeah.
just the general feel. I think back then was, I mean, now is just so different to back then.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
100%. To close that point, and we'll move on, I promise. I think just I feel like people need to be more authentic, and people need to be more intentional with their events and stuff. If you're trying to approach events or promoters, they're not going to look at talent anymore. They don't look at talent, they look at social media. It's like, what do
Yeah,
you like? What do you mean? But like,
it's so true. Like you can. I mean, like I don't mean any disrespect to anyone nowadays, but you can be a supermodel. You can be the most popular kid at school,
yes,
and you can become a better DJ or than some of the best musicians in the world.
yeah,
Not in the world, and like some great great musicians, but because they don't have the same popularity and maybe not the same looks and all that kind of stuff, you
mm-hmm,
don't really get the bookings.
mm-hmm,
And I think it's, yeah, again, I just think that, it's a lot of authenticity has been lost along the way in terms of this whole new, digital social media kind of time that we live in.
yeah. Let's move on. The second
Sure.
question is talking about bookings, right? You
Yeah,
mentioned bookings. So how do I like? For me, I'm not pushing for bookings because I know who I am and I know what kind of artist I want to be. I don't want to be a commercial DJ. I want to be a international DJ with intention, like
100%.
or a person that really moves the culture forward. But for people who really want to be seen, but with vibration or with intention, but also having that vibration of like I see you, but I also want to um, build brands that are authentic or build friendships that are authentic. So how do they do that in that regard, if that makes sense?
No, sorry, I'm missing the question a little bit. Just if you
So
can read.
sorry, it's okay. So what I said was, how do I get myself approach? How do I book myself? How do I make myself bookable in this day and age of social
I
media?
think, yeah, I think there's a big, I want, there's still a big underground following,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that underground following really does appreciate artists that are more musically inclined. And when I say more musically inclined, yes, like, I do these big productions, and a lot of them are commercial, but that doesn't really speak to my soul at all. I love doing the work and I love putting on the shows, but in terms of being a DJ and the music, I'm kind of in a similar situation to you, where I'm also kind of looking to restart my DJ career just because I love playing music, and I feel like there were just so many years when I was in this event company where we were booking so many artists. I almost felt like a bit bad to not to book myself, because I wanted to give people an opportunity, and I wanted to give DJs an opportunity. DJs that do it every day of their life. They that's what they are. They're DJs. Where I was more of a promoter. But I think I think if you're playing more in the underground space, I think you're really appreciated in a different kind of way. Um, and I've listened to a lot of the music that you put on your socials and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's quite similar to me. We've both got a very deep appreciation for underground music.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, I think the promoters in that space, the club owners in that space, they're not looking for. I don't think they're looking at big commercial DJs or DJs that have massive social media presence and massive social media accounts. They're more looking towards DJs that can almost play towards a niche. And for me, I feel that that's the best. That's the, again, I'll keep going back to the word authentic, but I think that's kind of where we want to be. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. If you don't mind, I would like to add some things.
Yeah.
Because I feel 100% authenticity all the way. But you need to understand who you are. Like you can't go to these rooms and not understand who you are and how to approach these people. Because although they're here to give you something and all that stuff, yes, it's a business,
Yeah.
but you also need to be kind, humble, and all that stuff. But also you need to understand yourself. You need to understand how to negotiate and all the stuff, so that you are able to be like, oh, this is me. This is how I talk. This is how I mix and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Or
Sure.
or am I wrong?
No, that makes perfect sense. I think identity is it's very, very important. And again, I think a lot of people that go the social media kind of route, you don't know if that's their actual identity or if it isn't. So yeah, I fully agree with what you're saying.
100%. So I've always wondered. My third question to you. I've always wondered, like, because these big events and all that stuff. What, like, well, your budget. What, how do you guys, like in general, like, how do people, like, in a general sense, like, do you guys have a yearly budget, so you guys figure out, oh, this is the budget we're doing, and this is what we're spending it on, and all the stuff, or am I off? Because I've always
No, so every event that we do has its own budget.
yes.
And like when I first started, I almost used the budget as a planning sheet. So back then we used Excel, kind of still do now, but there's a lot of good systems out there. But I would use Excel, and every single line item would almost be like an aspect that you have to organize.
Yeah.
So each line item actually became a tab, and then you would add all the different aspects to that tab. But I think every event is a brand new budget. And I think you also got to be careful, because a lot of people, they establish an event and they don't really run with it for a long enough time, and then they'll create another event, and that event might not do well, and then it kind of eats into the budget of another event. So I think it is very important to keep your events separate to one another and keep your budgets separate to one another. But it all depends on the show. It depends on the duration of your festival. Some festivals are 3 days, some are 1 day, some are 7 days. And it's definitely an experience thing. It's a lot of trying and testing. And I think with any, business, a lot of experience as well. You make a lot of mistakes, you lose a lot of money, you realize what works, what doesn't work, what's necessary and what's not necessary. That takes quite a long time to figure out. But I think when it comes to, budgeting for a show, it very much comes down to experience. I think when you're first starting out, there's so many line items and aspects that you completely miss, and then there's so many line items and aspects that you think are important and are not important at all. So setting a budget, it comes down to experience. It really does. And a lot of trial and error, and losing money and making money, obviously, along the way. Yeah.
Um, let's talk about my favorite part. Like,
Yeah.
how did you you also DJ and all that stuff. I was quite surprised you were DJ as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not in a bad way.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he only does events, and I was like, that was my assumption.
Yeah.
Uh, so, so how did you get into music and all that stuff? How did that transition come about, or if that makes sense?
How much time do I have? It's a story. It's a 35-year-old story, because that's how long I actually have been in the industry for. I
Wow.
started out when I was 13. I was part of an amazing community in Cape Town. I'm actually from Cape Town. I saw earlier you mentioned Joburg. I spent a lot of time in Joburg. I spent 10 years in Joburg.
Okay.
Some of the best years of my life
Uh-huh.
were in Joburg.
Mhm.
I love the people. I love everything about it. I find it very easy to work there.
Yeah.
But so I started when I was very young, when I was 13. I'm Jewish, and I'm part of the Jewish community here in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And when a girl turns 12, she has a bat mitzvah.
Mhm.
When a boy turns 13, he has a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
And, I was kind of a part of that when I was, a little kid. And I used to go to these functions where obviously there was music and dancing and DJs,
Mhm.
or one DJ. And I would just sit the whole night and watch the DJ. And there was one DJ in particular that, he would have, like, kind of like a piece of music or a piece of dancing, and it would, almost build up into like a crescendo. And when the song dropped, or where it ended, there was like, a big pop of like pyrotechnics back in the day.
Yeah.
And it got me pretty hooked. So I obviously wanted to be that DJ.
Mhm.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play at all of these parties.
Mhm.
And a friend of mine, by the name of Gavin, I'm not going to mention any surnames because I'm not too sure how comfortable people are with that. But my little business partner back in the day, we were both 13 years old. His name was Gavin, and we started a little thing called G&G Sound. I remember we made our first poster, which was all handmade, and we used a lot of glue and a lot of glitter, and we would take the sign with us, which was G&G Sound, to all of these functions.
Mhm.
And Gavin would bring his hi-fi set. I'd bring my hi-fi set. For those of you that don't know what that is, basically like a big ghetto blaster where you'd play, tapes, and he would play his song. When his song was coming to an end, I would start playing my song.
Mhm.
And we very quickly became very popular in the space. And by the age of 13, 14, 15, 16, we were doing a lot of, a lot of events, a lot of not just bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, but a lot of the school socials, a lot of the big school socials,
Mhm.
a lot of the trick dance after parties, a lot of little events like that. But when I was 16 or 17, I started getting into nightclubs, and again there, all my mates would be off mingling and at the bar and on the dance floor, and I would just stand there the whole night, and I would just watch the DJ. I had an absolute obsession over DJing.
Mhm.
And I was in this mobile disco space, and I really wanted to get into the clubbing space.
Mhm.
So I invested in a pair of turntables back in those days.
Mhm.
Um, it was like a very beginner set of turntables that couldn't really hold the BPM, so it was a bit frustrating. And I
Mhm.
started a really big record collection in those days. But
Mhm.
I'd say, like a lot of really good promoters in the space, it kind of stems from DJing, and it stems from an absolute like love and obsession with music.
Mhm.
Um, Again, I've been around for a long time. I've been in this industry for 35 years. So yes, a lot of people don't really know how this started, but I was a DJ back in the day. I had a couple of really good residencies at some big clubs in Cape Town.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'd say the mobile event business, kind of transformed into DJing.
Mhm.
Then I used to go to these clubs, and I always had these ideas of throwing my own parties there.
Mhm.
But I was too young. I was, I was under 18. I was under the age of 18.
Mhm.
I was DJing at a lot of the over 18 clubs, and
Mhm.
I had a particular residency at a super club in Cape Town called Dockside.
Mhm.
It was in Century City. It was a huge super club. It's actually a very big church now. It's been converted. I don't
Mhm.
know if people remember the place, but it was a huge building with a big dome on top, and it was multi-level,
Mhm.
state of the art. These guys from Belgium, they came and they built it, and I had a residency at that venue, and I went to the owners, who I became very close to. They gave me a lot of opportunity there, and I said to them, I want to do my own event here,
Mhm.
and we just couldn't get it right. Eventually they said to us, you're a bit too young, but why don't you do an under 18 event?
Mhm.
Shortly before then, our sound, technical disco business, we kept a lot of our equipment in a big warehouse facility, and
Mhm.
our warehouse facility was robbed. We were everything was stolen. Every single piece of equipment was stolen. And we were like in, two minds, because we got paid out from insurance, and we thought the payout, would be, here's, I don't know, go to the store and you can get this, go to that store to replace this. But we got paid out in cash.
Mhm.
And we we're kind of at a crossroads, what do we do with this? Do we restart our sound business, or do we do our first party? And
Mhm.
we invested that money into under 18 event, which was at this big super club. It started at 12 o'clock in the day, and it ended at 12 o'clock at night. So it was called the 12-hour party.
Mhm.
And we would go to every single school in the Western Cape. We would go to schools in Stellenbosch, schools in Franschhoek, southern suburbs, northern suburbs, Atlantic Seaboard, would go everywhere, and we would hand out flyers to all the kids, when they were coming out of school.
Mhm.
And that was definitely my favorite way of promoting. But the date came around, it was a 12-hour phone party, and the venue was next to a fun park, if you want to call it, called Topanga Junction, and had also just opened at the time, and there was this roller coaster ride called the Cobra,
Mhm.
and everyone was obsessed with this roller coaster ride. And we arrived at about 9 o'clock in the morning to set up,
Mhm.
and there was just this gigantic queue around the block.
Mhm.
Massive, massive queue of maybe 5,000, 6,000 people. And I thought that was the queue for this, this Cobra ride, roller coaster that everyone wanted to, ride. And it was
Mhm.
actually for our event. So all our marketing efforts, actually translated into 7,000 kids arriving at this event.
Yeah.
It was a massive success.
Mhm.
And we did a lot of other under 18 parties subsequently to that one. We
Mhm.
moved into a few areas as well.
Mhm.
And then I think as the kids got older, they started matriculating, and they started having, these matric dance after parties.
Mhm.
And at the time, I had another business partner. He had actually started Pep Rage at the time. He was doing a lot of these matric dance after parties that I used to DJ at. And we
Mhm.
were doing these really popular under 18 parties.
Mhm.
And we saw a lot of synergy there, where the under 18 market, obviously they're going to matriculate now, and they're going to have to go to their matric dance after party. So it was kind of like a channel, we'd channel the under 18 parties into the matric dance after parties,
Mhm.
and then they would go to Rage. Rage was very small at the time. It was only in Plettenberg Bay. I
Mhm.
didn't even know, I knew nothing about KZN. I didn't know that Joburg kids went to Mshlanga. I didn't know that Cape Town kids, I didn't know that the Durban kids went to Belito. I
Mhm.
didn't even know that these two towns existed.
Mhm.
I'm a surfer, so I went on a surf trip with Gavin, my business partner, the other G at the time,
Mhm.
and we went to Bali, and we met these kids from Umhlanga.
Mhm.
And similarly to this, they asked me, what I do, and we kind of got into it, and we explained it to them, and they were like, "You guys need to come to Umhlanga and Belito, because that's where all the Joburg kids and the Durban kids go to."
Mhm.
And, pretty much, a couple of weeks after we landed, we found two venues in KZN. One was called Boston Action Bar in Belito. The other one was called Cloud 9 in Umhlanga. We flew over, we met We met the club owners, who gave us a chance, who gave us a great chance. And we did the same thing. We, went out to all the schools, all the dance after parties, handed out the flyers.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how, Rage from Schlanger and Belito kind of started.
Mhm.
And, I think everything just evolved from that moment onwards. Rage led into other things. We started doing New Year's Eve events, and we started doing these big student parties where we'd close down, whole streets, where we would combine the street with the club and would close down whole streets. And yeah, it kind of just grew from there. It just happened. I've always had a very keen eye on detail.
Mhm.
I've always tried to do things a bit differently. I've been very obsessed. I'm obsessed with production and production quality, and
Mhm.
I think it's translated. I feel that if you're going to sell somebody a ticket, you want to give them a very unique experience, and you want to give them a great experience, and you want to give them something that they've never actually experienced before. And for me at the time, that was production. It was the best sound systems, the best lighting rigs, and just working with extreme talents. I think a lot of people say to me I'm very creative and I'm very talented, but I think maybe one of my biggest skills is finding very, very talented people, very
Mhm.
talented people, and bringing them into my space. I kind of know what I want out of an event, but
Mhm.
I haven't always had the tools, to put that together. I'm not a graphic designer as such. I bring people into what I do. I know what I want, and I kind of bring those people into what I do, and we grow together.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's kind of how things started. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great.
And then it just happened. Then it just evolved. Then as I said, you're bringing great people into what you do, and those people have ideas, and they come up with different events, and one thing leads to another, and you're surrounded by great people, and now you're doing 5 events, 6 events, you're all over the country,
Mhm.
and yeah, that's kind of how it all happened.
100%. What do you want to see in the scene right now that you don't see, or that you want people to pay more attention to nowadays?
Like at the same time, I love what's going on in the scene. I think there's some just unbelievably creative event producers, people that are just like authentic, very, very authentic. They have a particular sound, and they're quite true to that sound, and they build a big community around that, and they build almost like a tribe, like even when it comes to building the events and setting up the events, it becomes like a big community project where everyone gets involved.
Mhm.
But I mean, there's some amazing events happening in South Africa, some amazing events happening in Cape Town, some amazing events that I've been to recently, that are, again, very, very authentic.
Mhm.
To name a few, I was recently at Pangaea. I don't know if you know that festival, but again, it's a very unique festival that's quite like tribalistic, based. Um, there was a festival the other day called Senses. Somebody that I know by the name of Tally Zakin, an amazing DJ and lady in the space,
Mhm.
that's created an amazing event called Senses.
Mhm.
There's a huge event here called Folks,
Mhm.
and these events they have a certain feel and a certain sound and attract a certain audience, and it almost feels like it's not commercial. People are there for the music. They're there for the genre of music. They're there to see different artists. They're there to see artists that they've never, like I'm kind of like that. When I go to an event, I don't go to an event because a particular artist is playing. I go to an event because I want to be educated. I go to an event because they play that specific genre of music. And I think that's existing now more than ever. Even though some events are very mass scale and they're very commercial. I think
Mhm.
at the same time there's a lot of beautiful, aesthetically pleasing events that are just really, really incredible in the space right now. So I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of good things going on as well. I think there's a lot of good things going on. Yeah.
100%. I like 100% agree. I just wish like my only issue is like people must just be there. People must uh My only issue is that I want people to support the party instead of asking for guest list.
100%.
You know, that's all I ask. Like support the party, support the brands. You know, that's all I ask.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really appreciate what goes into putting these shows on.
Hmm.
You know, that it's not just a budget or a money thing, the time and the effort that goes into it. I mean, the planning, planning can take to come up with a concept and put in an event, you can come up with a concept 2 years ago and spend the next 2 years kind of, creating your product before you even get a site and set up.
Hmm.
Now you're spending like a month, sometimes 2 months, building this festival.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's very frustrating when, people don't appreciate this, and they aren't willing to pay for the experience.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I think promoters put such effort into giving people these amazing, incredible experiences. And I think, you know, we always used to say it. I'm very generous when it comes to giving out tickets, but in my mind, I always think, I don't go into your shop or your petrol station or your car garage and ask you for free things ever. I want to support those people, and I think in this space, particularly, people need to start paying for tickets.
Yeah.
They need to start paying for tickets.
100%. I think I'm also a generous person to a certain extent because I'm like, oh, you want to see my event?
Yeah,
Perfect. I'm like, being nice also gonna lose me, make me lose money. So like,
exactly,
so
exactly.
there has to be a balance in between. So
So
yeah. My other question to you is, what is your advice for today's artists? Because I feel like they need actual advice that actually helps them elevate in their greatest form.
I think it depends on what kind of artist you want to be, but I think if you're going to take it quite seriously, especially in terms of DJing, maybe not so much production work because a lot of artists work within various genres.
Hmm.
I think it's quite important nowadays to have a sound, to have a particular sound. I do it as well over the years. I've changed sounds, and I still do nowadays. I like various kinds of music, but I think it's important to have a sound. People hear 20 minutes of a DJ set and they know that it's that DJ because that DJ's got a particular sound. And I think it's very important to stay true to that sound. And I think it's resilience is a massive thing. It's a massive, massive thing. So many people start and they just give up way too early. It's the same as, starting a company. You'll start a company or you'll start a whatever, a DJ career or a brand, and you expect it to happen in 5 years and it doesn't. Some people get lucky and it happens in 2 or 3 years. But my advice to anyone, including artists, is just, stay true to yourself. Try try and come up with your own like identity, your own sound. It's a part of your brand, and I think just stick to it. Really, really stick to it. Sometimes things come around easy. Sometimes it's very difficult. But I believe that if you stick to the course, it will happen. It will definitely happen, without
Yeah,
a doubt.
100%. If you don't mind, I
Yeah.
would like to add stuff if you don't mind. I feel like for me, 100%. So I believe there are three things I believe, right? One is um, find your sound, yes. Surround yourself with the right people, yes.
Yeah.
Understand yourself, but also make sure that you don't copy people. Like be inspired,
100%.
but don't copy people because
Yeah.
there's only one you in this world. Like
100%.
so you can't be like if your favorite artist is a like let's say John Summit or something or whatever, or a Blundish, just to name a few people.
Yeah.
You can be inspired by them, but you need to find yourself. You need to find your not find yourself completely, but find your sound in a sense of like understanding. Oh, I'm unique in this regard because
Yeah.
I bring underground sounds that is one of a kind. You can't hear it anywhere else.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. when I say a sound, I'm not even
I,
referring to genres because I think it's perfectly okay to mix genres. You know, I do it a lot and I follow you and I listen to a lot of your sets and a lot of your music and like we both very multi-genre, but there's no reason why you can't bring, you know, house into techno, into melodic, into Afro house.
yeah,
But, you know, you can still have that signature sound
yeah.
without a doubt, you know, like some of the biggest artists in the world do it. So Black Coffee doesn't necessarily stick to Afro house at all. You know, he plays a lot of deep house. He plays a lot of house. You know,
Mhm.
it's the same as you know many of these artists. You know, we you know think like an artist like Shinza is predominantly Afro house, but you know he also plays amazing techno sets. He produces a lot of like big techno tracks and stuff as well. So and you can hear it Shinza. You know, so it's not a genre thing. I think it's cool to mix genres. It's a sound thing. Yeah.
Um, okay, so I'm gonna give you like four more questions and I'll let you go if
Yeah.
that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
My other question is, people talk about royalties and everything, right? And booking fees and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Why is it important to read your contracts and all that stuff as an artist, and why is it important to understand that as an artist and the business side of being an artist? If you can answer that.
I think being an artist is it's a business, you know,
Yeah.
in a sense, and it's got to be treated like a business. You know, if you're not treating it like a business, you're never going to get taken seriously, you know, and you're always going to get taken advantage of.
Mhm.
So, you know, I think you need to treat yourself like you would treat a business, and I think contracts are incredibly important. They
Mhm.
really, really are, and it's important. You know, from a respect point of view, it's important that those contracts are followed. You know, a
Mhm.
lot of the big international artists that we brought to South Africa, I mean, the
Mhm.
contracts are very, very stringent and very strict. But those
Mhm.
artists will also they'll put their technical rider in there, obviously,
Mhm.
and they'll have their hospitality rider in there, and then there will be, you know, various points. So you know they want waters and they want a bottle of tequila and they want a six pack of beers, and then they'll put something random in there like we want a pair of Nike shoes for myself and all the crew. And then you read this and you're like, what's going on here? And then you know you contact the artist agency and you're like, listen, I've read your contract. Is this why are you asking for this? It's completely unrelated to you know what we're doing here, and they put that in there to check that you're actually reading their rider and reading their contract.
Mhm.
Because if you're not reading their rider or reading their contract, you're actually spoiling their ability to put on a performance. You
Mhm.
know, a lot of the time people go and see a certain artist and they're like, oh, his set wasn't as good as the set before. But sometimes, you know, if you don't have a contract and you don't have a rider and you're not being taken seriously and people aren't following that, you just can't put on the same performance that you did at the previous show because maybe the technical gear is wrong. Maybe, you know, again, contracts are really important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, I 100% agree. And I feel like the big issue with that, I feel like people don't educate artists on that
No.
more. Like, they need to educate them more because I'm lucky I have people around me that are in the industry and understand what I'm talking about and all that stuff. So but people are not as lucky as I am.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about like people. There needs to be agencies where okay, we have we you want you're being booked somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Great, that's brilliant. But we need to go through the contracts to make sure that everything is top level. We don't need to pay you whatever what we you don't need to pay for that service or whatever. You
Yeah.
just for the first one you just understand what the contract is saying so that you don't look like a person that doesn't know what they're talking about. If that makes sense.
You want to obviously you want to come across as a professional, and I think you know even creating a contract, you know, used to be so daunting because you don't know
Mhm.
if you know you had to go do I don't know do it with a lawyer, and you'll just have to spend a lot of time in this, and you have to you don't know what to already put in that, and you nowadays you know with AI and ChatGPT and all of that stuff, it's super easy.
Yeah.
Um, there should be no reason why you know that's a step that you kind of you know look past.
Hmm.
If you want to be a professional, you have to, I think, behave like a professional.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have so much access to, all these kinds of things that seem quite daunting before. So yeah,
Yes, that's why you need to have people around you. Except, even though you have AI to help you with majority of the things, you still need to have a lawyer, and
of course, of course,
you need to have those people that actually know what they're doing.
of
And
course.
stuff, so that you don't look like a person
Yeah.
that doesn't know what to talk
And
to.
my other advice is don't play DJ sets for free.
Ooh.
Don't. It's a bit of a problem. You think by being a nice guy, and doing a couple of DJ sets, you're going to be appreciated more, but you don't. You actually you aren't you don't end up getting the respect you deserve. Again, it's a business, and my advice to people is just don't
Mhm.
play free DJ sets. Rather
Mhm.
charge. Yeah,
Mhm. Don't try that because and please, last one,
yeah. No, as
last,
many. Yeah.
last, not last question, but
Point.
last thoughts about this. I feel like no more free sets. Like, you cannot, you're hurting your career. Firstly,
100%.
you're hurting your career saying, "Oh, I'm building my brand by," no, like,
Yeah.
no. And
No.
last one about this, like, I feel like you need to understand what you're doing. Like, you can't expect people to take you seriously if you do not know what you're doing. Like,
Exactly.
you cannot do that. Like, you cannot
Exactly.
expect people to and your fees must match your talent, right?
100%. And I think you must also be very particular about the performance that you want to put on. You need to be quite particular about about your rider as well. How many times do we arrive at a venue? Especially if we're playing, like, back in the day when you're playing record, like you can't DJ without monitor speakers. How many times have people got to a venue where there aren't even monitor speakers to play off? So I think professionalism is a very important thing, and I think you need to charge, and I think you need to tell people what you need in order to make to be able to perform. To be able to perform, you need the right tools, and I think if you're going to go into a performance, you need to make sure that the area, the club, the room, whatever it might be, is set up according to a rider. Yeah.
Mhm. Um, and my second to last question to you is my biggest issue with the scene, like not because like I had this conversation and people say I'm tripping about this, but for me it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, it's not as wheelchair access. There's not a lot of wheelchair access. You have to
Yeah.
go and ask the people that run these events, big events, to know if they actually are wheelchair access. So, like, I can't support you if there's no wheelchair.
100%.
I really want to. I really want to, but I genuinely can't.
Yeah.
Like, it's
It's
not the money issue. It's like if that make, or am I tripping, or
No, not at all. I think I've gone a little bit blank now, but we do a big show in KZN called Anywhere in the City,
yes,
and famous DJ is also in a wheelchair. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about. Big Afro house music artist.
I know.
But I mean,
Yeah.
we have him played I mean, we book him at a lot of events because he's an awesome artist. And we almost cater for those kinds of artists in our actual DJ moves. Make sure that there's space that's high enough in order for that artist to do their thing. And obviously ramps are very, very important.
Yeah.
They're important for everyone. So many people fall downstairs that
Yo.
there should be ramps at events regardless.
Yes.
But yeah, I
Cause
mean,
I, cause
people attend events from all walks of life. Whether they have disabilities, no disabilities. Like, everyone needs to experience music. Everyone needs to experience eventing,
yeah.
and it needs to be accessible to everybody.
because I'm like I love these events, but it's not the money issue. It's just the the fact of like I have to ask people to figure out whether it is
So,
the truth.
no, you shouldn't have to do that. And I really hope that other promoters take it more seriously, and that all these spaces are set up for everyone to attend. Yeah.
Mm. My last question to you is what legacy would you like to leave?
Sure. Um, I think maybe I'm a good example of not giving up.
Mm,
Starting out really really young,
mm,
and yeah, I just want to be seen as somebody that's just pretty resilient and doesn't give up,
mm,
and just want to kind of be remembered in the space as somebody that did very unique things at the same time. I kind of pride myself on doing things differently, and I hope that resonates. I think a lot of people that come to our shows see things that aren't necessarily at other shows.
mm.
And I think I want to be remembered as somebody that sees things in a different way, and does things differently and tries to bring very unique experience to events. Yeah,
Mm. For me, I would like to think I would. I want to build something. I hope my legacy things says to people that oh, she's bigger than she's bigger than just what people think. If that makes sense.
hundred
And
percent.
I want to build something that people can be learn from and be like, oh, she's a DJ, everything, but all in all, she's a lovely person,
Of
you know.
course, 100%. And I think the other way around as well. I think the more successful anyone becomes within their fields, you
Hmm.
know, humbleness it's incredibly important. And I think it goes for a lot of artists and musicians that have this like deep feeling. I think musicians and artists have like a deeper thing. To people that maybe aren't artists.
Yeah.
Quite hard to explain,
Hmm.
but you want to make yourself. I want to be accessible to everybody. I don't ever want to be put in a box of being somebody that's unapproachable.
Hmm.
I
Oh,
think you got to keep yourself wide open. I
yes,
think. Yeah,
100%,
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
I'm like, wow. Like for me, it's like for me, I'm like I want to be approachable, but also in a way that is professional,
Hundred
but
percent.
but also like you can give me a hug, like I don't mind. Unless you like a person that I'm not a huggy person, but if I really like you, I'll give you a hug. Like if that makes
I'll be giving you a hug at the next event that we book you at. That's for sure.
Mhm. Like for me, it's like this episode has literally made me cry because in a way I feel seen and heard, and I hope people feel seen the way that I've been. People that I've had the opportunity, have had that opportunity to talk to, feel seen. Because I love what you guys are doing for the culture and everything, and I really admire what you're doing for the culture. Honestly, you are not only a lovely person, but you are a very legendary person in my eyes.
Thank
Like,
you so much, and
so,
thank you for allowing me to be seen and heard as well.